Imagine waking up tomorrow and your 15-year-old can't legally use Instagram. Not restricted. Not limited. Illegal. This has already happened. Australia banned social media for anyone under 16. And now, other governments are moving, and they're moving fast. The real question is this the start of a global crackdown? And is the US about to be left behind? This isn't just another story about tech regulation. This is about who controls the internet. It's about whether our kids will need a digital ID just to log in. And it's about whether the era of tech companies regulating themselves is officially over. Because something changed in late 2025, and most people haven't realized just how big it is yet. Let's start with Australia, which witnessed the first shockwave. On December 10, 2025, the country implemented a law banning social media for anyone under 16. To enforce this, platforms must verify a user's age. This could mean using a government ID, bank verification, or even facial age estimation technology. And here's what's really important. Australia didn't wait for a global consensus. They didn't wait for years of long-term data. They just did it. And once one major Western democracy crosses that line, others feel they have permission to move too. That's how policy cascades begin. But here's the twist. Australia might not even be the most important part of this story. The real action is happening in Europe, where much bigger factors are already in play. France has passed legislation targeting users under 15. Spain has introduced similar laws. Norway, Greece, Denmark, they are all moving toward tighter age restrictions on social media. But the real game changer is this. The European Union is building a digital identity wallet, an EU-wide, government-backed digital ID system. Now, why does that matter so much? Because one of big tech's biggest arguments against age verification has always been, it's technically impossible to do at scale. Well, Europe is building the very infrastructure that makes it possible. And once that infrastructure exists, regulation becomes a whole lot easier. If Europe can prove that this system works, it completely changes the global argument. And that brings us to the United States. The US faces two massive obstacles that Europe and Australia don't. The first is the First Amendment, and the second is the lack of a national digital ID. American courts are famously protective of free speech, even for minors, which makes outright bans difficult to uphold. And without a centralized, national system for verifying age, Washington can't simply copy and paste the laws from Australia or the EU. So, what's happening in the US instead? Complete and utter chaos. Florida has banned social media access for kids under 14. Nebraska is requiring parental verification for minors to sign up. California is pushing for safety by design principles to be built into platforms. Texas is fighting legal injunctions against its own laws. Utah is constantly modifying its implementation timelines. It's a total patchwork. Different states have different ages, different rules, and different enforcement methods. For tech companies, this is a compliance nightmare. For parents, it's incredibly confusing. And for teenagers, it's just inconsistent and arbitrary depending on where you live. But what makes this so much bigger than just a parenting policy is that this is fundamentally about power. For over a decade, the big social media platforms have largely set their own policies for young users. Governments reacted slowly, if at all. Now, that balance of power is finally shifting. When major markets like Australia, the entire European Union, and potentially even India adopt these strict new rules, platforms can no longer treat it as a small, local exception. They are forced to redesign their entire global product to comply. And here's the crucial part. Once they demonstrate that they can successfully comply with these laws overseas, it becomes much harder for them to argue in US courts that compliance is technically impossible. That right there is the turning point. And there's a reason this is all resonating so strongly on a political level. Parents are genuinely worried. Lawmakers, from both parties, see a rare bipartisan opportunity to act. And the social media companies themselves have become politically vulnerable. Concerns about youth mental health, debates over addictive design, and widespread fears about data privacy have all converged on this single issue. This isn't just about setting age limits anymore. It's about a fundamental loss of trust in the tech industry. So, what happens next? In the short term, the US is likely to stay fragmented. The legal challenges will continue, and different states will keep experimenting with their own solutions. But think about the long term. If Europe proves that scalable, secure age verification actually works, if Australia successfully enforces its ban, And if other large, emerging markets like India follow suit, then the global norm will have shifted. And when global norms shift, even a powerhouse like the United States eventually has to adapt. We may be witnessing the end of the open access era for minors on the internet. The debate is no longer about should platforms regulate themselves. It's now about how far should governments go. Ideas like mandatory digital IDs, facial age estimation, and holding platforms legally liable for the content seen by kids were considered fringe concepts just 5 years ago. Now, they are being written into law. So, the real question isn't whether social media bans for minors are spreading. They are. The real question is, will the United States take a leading role in shaping this new era of digital governance, or will it be forced to follow the rules that everyone else has already made? Thank you for watching. If you found this interesting, please like this video and subscribe for more analysis on how technology is changing our world.